All right, good morning. And it's my pleasure to welcome you to the last meeting of the California Board of Psychology for the 2021 year. I would like to call the meeting to order and ask that Ms. Berteau please call the roll to establish quorum.
Good morning. Kasuga?
Here.
Cervantes?
Here.
Boo?
Aye.
Sheets?
Here.
Nystrom?
Here.
Phillips?
Here.
Rescate? Rogers?
Here.
Tate?
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Berteau. A quorum having been established, we will now move to item number 2, the President's welcome. And we like to start off our board meetings with the recitation of our board mission. And so the Board of Psychology protects consumers of psychological services by licensing psychologists, regulating the practice of psychology, and supporting the evolution of the profession. And with that in mind, before we launch into item number 3, Madam Moderator, would you please share with us how we would manage the WebEx? And I know the WebEx format or interface has changed for some over the last couple months. So turning it over to you for the introduction and navigation of the platform.
Thank you, Mr. Board President. Before we get started, I would like to remind board members and senior staff who are not speaking to mute their microphones. If I detect background noise during the meeting as a result of unmuted microphones, I will interject with a brief friendly reminder or simply mute the microphones. To facilitate public comment, we will be utilizing the WebEx question and answer feature, also referred to as the Q&A panel. When the board president reaches a point in the agenda at which public comment is appropriate, public comment will be requested. At the board's direction, I will turn on and announce the opening of a Q&A feature. It's not necessary to identify yourself in order to make public comment. Please note that the Q&A feature is being used only as a means for members of the public to represent that they would like to make a verbal comment. Once given permission to unmute, the member of the public may unmute themselves and verbally state their comment. So that is new. In old times, I used to be able to unmute the public. Now, members of the public will be given permission to unmute themselves. The Q&A feature is not to be used for typing out questions or for board members to communicate with one another. If any attendee utilizes a profane name, they will not be called upon to prevent members of the public from being subjected to profane language. While you are free to express criticism or negative views, for the sake of the members of the public participating on the call, please do not use profane language when making public comments to the board. And now I return the floor back to the board president.
Thank you so much, Madam Moderator. Before we open it up for public comment, I just would like to share that as speakers come forward, I would ask that individuals making comments to not discuss the specifics, including names as to pending complaints, pending licensing applications, or pending disciplinary actions that may come before the board for a decision. We ask this because such discussions are considered ex parte communications, as they could provide information to the board members that is outside of the record in violation of the Administrative Procedure Act. Therefore, such discussions may create a conflict and interfere with the board's capacity to make necessary determinations. Board staff is available to speak to you individually and answer your questions outside of the hearing of board members. That email address is bopmail@psychology.ca.gov. The board is eager to listen attentively to your comments. And while there may be a desire on all of our parts to engage in further discussion with comments presented during this time, the board may not discuss or take action on any matter raised during this public comment section, except to decide whether to place the matter on the agenda of a future meeting. I know this may give the impression that we may not be responsive to this agenda item, but these procedures are critical to ensure the compliance with the Open Meetings Act and to avoid compromising the speaker's goals or the board's mission. So with that, Madam Moderator, would you please open the public comment section?
Thank you, Mr. Board President. I've opened up the Q&A panel, and if any member of the public would like to make a comment, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and submit it to all panelists. We are displaying instructions for your reference, and we'll give you a moment. All right, I see no request for comment at this time. Mr. Board President, shall I close the Q&A panel?
Please do. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We will now move to item number 4 for the Executive Office report. Ms. Sorick.
Good morning, board members. Can everybody hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay, great. Included in the meeting packet is the executive officer's report, and included in that report are 2 items, the personnel update as well as the waivers and guidance updates. I just want to make a point to let you all know that I did include from the last waiver update the request process for new waivers, and that waiver process is no longer relevant. They are on a waiver wind down process, and Ms. Holmes may be able to speak to this a little bit during her update. But attached is the most recent waiver update with all the active waivers. And the only update I have from the last board meeting is that the 3 waivers that the board had delegated authority from the declared emergency. We have been made aware that the declared emergency will be extended at least through March 31st, 2022. And then beyond that point, we have not heard any other update on that. So all of the other waivers will be ending when those are each listed in that spreadsheet with the approval status line. Does anybody have any questions about waivers or our personnel update? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sorick. And I'm not seeing any raised hands from board members, so we'll go ahead and turn to public comment for item number 4. Madam Moderator.
Thank you, Mr. Board President. The Q&A panel is now available, and if any member of the public would like to comment on this agenda item, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and submit it to all panelists. We are displaying instructions, and we'll give you a moment. All right, I see no request for comment at this time. Mr. Board President, shall I close the Q&A panel?
Please do. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So we will turn now to item number 5, which is the president's report. And so we will take on the first item with regard to the committee updates, or excuse me, the committee meeting dates. Those are in your board packets for 2022. Thank you to all the board members and staff who completed the scheduling pieces, and special thanks to our central services team for coordinating all of our schedules so we can get that 2022 schedule down. The second item on this agenda is related to committees themselves, and I wanted to share that part of this going into 2022, we've created an ad hoc committee for the purposes of studying the board's budget. The board will be meeting with staff in January to discuss, the budget committee, which is an ad hoc committee, will meet with staff in January to discuss analysis and recommendations with regard to the budget. A public stakeholder meeting will be held in the around the end of Q1 or the beginning of Q2 to discuss those recommendations. And then the committee will meet after the stakeholder meeting in Q2 to approve a recommendation that will go to the full board for its spring board meeting. I'm also pleased to share that Dr. Rogers will chair the committee, and Ms. Nystrom will join Dr. Rogers on that committee as well. I want to give hold the space for either Dr. Rogers or Ms. Nystrom to make any comments with regard to this item, if they so wish.
This is Dr. Rogers. I'd just like to say thank you for the opportunity to serve, and I'm looking forward to working with the staff on these issues moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rogers. And Ms. Nystrom?
Hi, yes, I just also express my thanks for looking at this ad hoc committee for the budget, and I look forward to participating. Thank you.
Madam Moderator, seeing no other board discussion, would you please open the public comment section?
Thank you, Mr. Board President. I have opened up the Q&A panel, and if any member of the public wishes to comment on Agenda Item 5, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. We are displaying instructions, and we'll give you a moment. All right, I see no request for comment at this time. Mr. Board President, shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
You're welcome.
I would also like to take this time to also turn it over to Dr. Rogers for a mindfulness exercise. In my absent-mindedness, we should have started that at the President's welcome, not during the President's report, so my apologies. And it's a good reminder why we'll be launching into this mindfulness exercise. So Dr. Rogers, I'm going to turn this over to you during the President's report. If you could share a little bit about why we're doing it and also guide us through this practice, we're really excited to be a part of this and to be engaged in this. So Dr. Rogers.
Thank you so much, Mr. Fu. I appreciate it. Let's see, why are we doing this? Well, because it's been a really, really difficult time that we've all been, navigating through personally, professionally, and we wanted to carve out a little space to just take care of ourselves. I think we all have tons of responsibilities, tons of tasks that are required of us. And we as clinicians are often holding space for other people. And so it's also really important that we hold space for ourselves in the spaces that we can. So this is an opportunity for us each to go inward, tend to ourselves a little bit, settle our bodies, settle our minds, settle our hearts, as we get ready to engage in the work of navigating through the agenda and talking about the practice of psychology in the state. So we're going to carve out maybe about 10 minutes, I understand, for this practice. And I've been doing mindfulness for a long time, and it continues to be a practice that is restorative, is nourishing, is settling, is grounding, and I'm really thankful for the opportunity to be able to share it with all of you today. If those of you in the audience have a mindfulness practice already, then this will be your mindfulness exercise for today. And those who are new to mindfulness, just observe and see what you notice and see if this is something that would be helpful for you on this path. So we'll start off by getting into a position that's comfortable. That can be seated, that can be standing, it can be lying down. So whatever is most supportive for your practice. And I'll guide us through a gentle body scan. And at the very end, I will ring a soft bell to let you know that our practice has concluded. And then we can pick up with the rest of the agenda. But for now, we rest. We take care of ourselves. So finding a position that's comfortable. closing the eyes if that's available or comfortable for you, and if not, gently lowering the gaze. And if you're seated, finding a posture that conveys both dignity and ease. And as my meditation teacher describes it, we're sitting upright, but not uptight. And for a few moments, centering our attention on the breath. Focusing on the inhale and the exhale. The rising and the falling of the chest. Welcoming ourselves back home, home to the here and now, home to the present moment. Home to our bodies, and home to the breath. Feeling the points of contact between our body and perhaps the chair we're sitting in. Feet on the floor. The ground beneath us. The earth supporting us. Settling our minds, our hearts, and bodies. Experience in a way that is compassionate. So noticing the toes, any sensation, any pressure, pain, whatever's there to be felt, just noticing. And then moving to the soles of our feet. Just noticing what's present and being with the experience. And to the tops of our feet, into our ankle. Moving up from the ankles to our lower legs. Our knees. Moving up to our thighs. Again, returning back to the point of contact between our legs and the seat beneath us. Moving up to the pelvic area and our sits bones, where we're making contact with the chair or the floor or the cushion. Just being present and noticing. And moving up to our trunk, centering our attention on the abdomen. Maybe the expanding and the falling away of the belly, on the in-breath and the out-breath. Sensing whatever is being felt there in this moment. And up to the chest. Giving thanks for our lungs that have been breathing us for a lifetime. And our heart for keeping this body alive every day. Noticing any sensations. And up to the shoulders. And to the upper back and the lower back. Giving thanks for our spine that keeps us upright. And moving from our lower back up to the upper back and to the shoulders. And down to the upper arms, the lower arms. Just offering this part of our body kind attention and compassionate care. Our wrists, our hands, each finger, just lingering with our fingers and hands and wrists. Back to the lower arms, our elbow, back to the upper arms, the shoulders, which can be a place where we carry a lot of tension. We're offering a sense of ease and care to our shoulders. We're all carrying so much on our shoulders and have been for nearly 2 years. So just offering a little tenderness to our shoulders for the weight they carry. And up to our neck. Which helps us to keep our heads on straight. So offering thanks to the neck. And up to our head, where we have the jaw, the mouth, our ears that allow us to hear, our nose that allows us to smell all of the fragrances in the world. Centering our attention on the eyes that allow us to see with kindness and compassion. Our forehead, your entire face. And up to our hair and the crown of our head. In this moment, giving thanks for our bodies, these vessels that contain all of our lived experience. Resting in kind awareness. Giving thanks for this practice of noticing, being with, and caring for our bodies today. And returning the attention back to the breath. The inflow and the outflow. And returning your attention back to this moment. And the room. Thank you for your practice.
Thank you, Dr. Rogers, for leading us into that mindful exercise. And gratitude seemed to be a theme through that exercise. And I would just like to appreciate our thanks and gratitude to you for not only leading us into this mindful exercise today, but also authoring articles for our board newsletter, and also showcasing this practice at our national meeting at the Association of State and Provincial Psychology Boards. I know many of the board members, commissioners from boards across the country spoke highly of the mindfulness practice and how it centered them leading into those discussions. And thank you for today for leading us here.
It is my absolute pleasure and honor. Thank you so much, Mr. Fu.
Board members, comments? Not, and I don't see any. We'll take on item number 6. Right, seeing no comments, we'll move to item number 6. So item number 6 is the discussion and possible approval of the board meeting minutes from August 27th. These are materials that are in your hand carry documents. So you can access those minutes in hand carry. Are there board members who would like to make any changes or amendments to the board minutes?
Hi, this is Dr. Tate. I'm happy to move to approve the board minutes from August 27th, 2021.
We have a motion by Dr. Tate. Do we have a second?
Second.
And we have a second by Dr. Phillips. Is there additional board comments? All right, hearing none. Madam Moderator, would you please open the public comment section for this item, please?
Thank you, Mr. Board President. I've opened up the Q&A panel, and any member of the public that would like to make a comment, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and submit it to all panelists. We are displaying instructions, and we'll give you a moment. All right, I don't see any requests for comment at this time. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please, Madam Moderator. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, we will now, seeing no further board comments and public comments, we'll ask Ms. Pertot to call the roll.
Kasuga,
Aye.
Cervantes,
Aye.
Fu,
Aye.
Sheets,
Aye.
Nystrom,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Rogers,
Aye.
Tate.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, that motion carries. We will now hit to item number 7, Department of Consumer Affairs update. It's my pleasure to welcome Carrie Holmes, the Deputy Director for Board and Bureau Relations from the Department of Consumer Affairs. Ms. Holmes, over to you.
Good morning, Board President Fu, board members, and Executive Officer Sorik. I am Carrie Holmes, Deputy Director of Board and Bureau Relations at the Department of Consumer Affairs. Thank you for inviting me to provide an update. DCA appreciates all board members and staff who have continued to serve through a pandemic that has affected all of us in many ways. We are working together to find the right balance of staying connected and productive while staying safe and healthy. DCA and all its boards and bureaus continue to look to the future and use lessons learned to identify long-term efficiencies and policy changes. Staff are working in the office to provide the most effective consumer protection and public service, while also utilizing telework where appropriate. DCA is assembling a task force to help the department create a telework policy that will provide further clarity and structure for managers and staff. To combat the spread of COVID-19 and protect vulnerable communities, California has implemented enhanced safety measures for state employees and workers in healthcare settings. State employees must show proof of vaccination or be subject to regular COVID-19 testing. DCA's testing program kicked off in early October with the launch of a pilot at DCA Headquarters 1. Select programs are designated to test at Headquarters 1, and the program list recently expanded due to the capabilities of the site. Board and committee members must follow health and safety protocols if they plan to visit a DCA location or attend an in-person board meeting, regardless of location. Members must verify vaccination or follow testing protocols in accordance with that location's requirements. Please communicate any plans for in-person meetings as soon as possible so DCA can assist with coordination of teleconference options for the public, vaccination verification, and COVID-19 testing. DCA recognizes the difficulty of planning for future meetings as the pandemic continues to evolve. On September 16th, Governor Newsom signed AB 361 that extends the ability of boards and committees to meet remotely by amending the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act. The executive order tied to the state of emergency was ended when this new law took effect. Under this law, remote meetings are allowed until January 30th, 2022, after which time meetings will need to be in person in accordance with all aspects of the Open Meetings Act. We don't know what additional changes to the law may be coming, but I think we all recognize there are benefits to remote meeting options, such as increased public participation, cost savings, and a lower carbon footprint due to reduced travel. DCA encourages boards and bureaus to continue utilizing remote meetings this year to protect the health of staff, board members, and the public. We will keep you updated on any additional changes to meeting requirements. I'd like to share that DCA has been made aware of various scams affecting boards and bureaus. We have shared information about these scams on the DCA website and social media. Please take a moment to make yourself aware of these scams and learn how to protect yourself from malicious individuals. If any licensees notice anything that seems suspicious, please let the board or DCA know right away. As a reminder, 2021 is a mandatory sexual harassment prevention training year. This means all employees and board members are required to complete the training during this year, which is rapidly approaching its end. Board members will access the training through the Learning Management System, or LMS, which is DCA's training portal. Board and Bureau Relations is happy to assist you with any questions or concerns you may have about using the LMS. As always, Board and Bureau Relations is here to help. If there's anything we can do to assist, please reach out. This concludes my presentation, and I'll hand it back over to Board President Fu.
Thank you so much, Ms. Holmes. Board members, are there any questions for Ms. Holmes with regard to her update?
Hi, this is Ms. Nystrom.
Ms. Nystrom, and then Dr. Phillips. Ms. Nystrom.
Yes, I was curious on the scams, if you can give us an example or two of the scams that DCA is noticing.
Absolutely. So one thing that we've heard from several boards is that licensees are receiving phone calls from individuals who say they represent their licensing board, and they make threats about either their license being suspended or some kind of criminal activity on their license. And they ask them to either pay money or give personal information over the phone. And they have a way of making their phone number look the same as the board's phone number. So this can be very confusing to licensees. We've also seen some emails where individuals pretend to be a board member or board staff, either going out to board members or licensees as well. So it's on email and phone. So folks should really verify where any individual is calling or emailing from, and you can always just hang up and call the board directly if you get one of those suspicious calls.
Thank you for that additional information.
You're welcome.
Dr. Phillips.
Good morning, Ms. Holmes.
Good morning.
So I understand that the state of emergency has been extended through March 31st. I'm curious as to why the waivers that were issued either by the governor or Department of Consumer Affairs are not being similarly extended. And the reason I ask in particular is the face-to-face supervision requirement, which, based on the current waiver, will start again on January 1st of 2022. So I was curious as to the logic behind it.
Well, I'm not privy to all of the conversations that go into making these decisions. They are made at a different level. But there are some waivers that are tied directly to the declaration of emergency, things like the ability to administer COVID-19 vaccines. And then other waivers that have been in place for some time have expired or will expire at the end of the year. DCA continues to encourage boards to make permanent changes if those would be appropriate, and to continue to communicate as well about what you're hearing. Some waivers were extended a little longer than expected. We have been told those are final extensions, but do continue to let us know your concerns, and we'll pass those along.
Yes, thank you. It just seems to me if the public health crisis is continuing through March 31st, bringing, for instance, supervisors face-to-face with supervisees seems to run contrary to the spirit of trying to contain the pandemic. But that's just my, it's been a source of concern for licensees until now. I think it continues to be a source of concern. But I also understand that there has to be some kind of wind down. So I appreciate the additional information.
Of course, and I do hear your concern, and I will pass along that we have this conversation. Thank you so much for bringing it up.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Phillips. Ms. Holmes, I have one question related on the emergency order, that the extension of the emergency order that Ms. Sorek referenced in her report. And this relates, I guess, to Dr. Phillips' question too, is based on the extension of the emergency order, does that also then mean that if the board decides to meet via teleconference in February of next year, it would rely on the emergency order and not on the state legislation that was passed with the urgency clause?
No, the executive order that waived some portions of the Open Meetings Act did end, and in its place, the legislation took effect. As of now, the legislation is only in effect until the end of January. I do know that there has been an appetite statewide for a longer term solution because of the benefits that I mentioned in the report of remote meetings, but I don't know yet if anything will change. There is uncertainty right now, which I know is difficult for everyone, but I hope that we will have some updates if there are any to be had, and we will have them soon.
Thank you so much, Ms. Holmes. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
I will turn, seeing no further board comment, Madam Moderator, would you please open this for public comment, please?
Thank you, Mr. Board President. I have opened up the Q&A panel, and if any member of the public would like to make a comment on agenda item 7, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and submit it to all panelists. We are displaying instructions, and we'll give you a moment. All right, I see no request for comment at this time. Oh, I spoke too soon. Dr. Winkleman would like to make a comment. So Dr. Winkleman, I will give you permission to unmute yourself. So you should be able to unmute yourself. There you go. You're unmuted.
Hi, thank you. It's Dr. Elizabeth Winkleman from the California Psychological Association. I just wanted to add to the concerns that was raised by Dr. Phillips and others about reinstituting the face-to-face supervision requirement, and ask that the board consider ways of extending that further or making that permanent, as it seems to be working very well for many of our supervisors and trainees. Thank you.
And it looks like we have Melody Schaefer that would also like to make a comment. So Melody, you should be able to unmute yourself. There you go, you're unmuted.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you. This is Dr. Melody Schaefer I'm chair of the California Psychology Internship Council and the division representative for Division 2 of the California Psychological Association on Education and Training. I would like to support what Dr. Phillips brought up as well. There's a great deal of concern in the constituency of both KPIC member doctoral and training programs, as well as those members of the Division 2 board regarding the January 1st deadline. It's our understanding, or at least we've heard, that the Board of Behavioral Sciences has legislation that has changed their regulations to permanently accept virtual supervision. But more to the point of what Dr. Phillips brought up, with the uptick that we're seeing in infection rates, as we would expect during the season and moving into winter, it seems untoward to put supervisees and supervisors potentially at harm's risk. We also have Medicare, Medi-Cal, and the insurance corporations continuing to approve online teletherapy. So again, with all the patients being seen online through teletherapy, and then to have to negotiate how to do supervision face-to-face and taking that risk, again, seems like a potential to put people in harm's way. So we hope that the DCA will consider these issues and take it to the powers that be for further consideration. Thank you so much.
All right, this is the moderator. I see no further requests for comment. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Board members, any further comments or discussion for this agenda item? All right, seeing none. Ms. Holmes, thank you so much for making time today. We really appreciate it, and we really appreciate continuing to work with you.
Thank you. My pleasure.
All right, we will now head to agenda number 8 with relation to the budget report. Mr. Glasspiegel, over to you.
Thank you, President Fu. Good morning, board members. As customarily discussed at every board meeting, the board has a long-standing structural imbalance. A structural imbalance is when the board is allotted more money through the governor's budget than what the board brings in as revenue. This is typical for special fund programs, as these programs are fiscally measured by how many months their fund has in reserve, which indicates how many months the board will be able to operate should the board stop receiving revenue, versus whether they bring in enough revenue each year to cover their expenses. It is often the case that boards under DCA are required to reduce their months in reserve with a structural imbalance before they can request a fee increase from the legislature. Included in your meeting materials is the board's current fund condition showing insolvency in fiscal year 23-24. Board staff anticipate this to be pushed out to fiscal year 24-25 once the board's regulatory package to increase its fees to the statutory maximum becomes effective. This fee package is currently planned for notice at least 45 days prior to the board's February 2022 meeting, so the hearing can take place at that meeting. The remainder of the board's plan to right-size its structural imbalance is included in the memo for this item, and I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Glasspiegel. Are there questions from the board to Mr. Glasspiegel? Not seeing any hands or unmuted microphones, we'll then turn to public comments in the interim.
Thank you, Mr. Board President. I am opening up the Q&A panel, and if any member of the public wishes to make a comment on agenda item 8, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. We are displaying instructions, and we'll give you a moment. All right, I see no requests for comment at this time. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
Okay.
All right, board members, one last call on this item for budget updates and budget report. And I also understand that we have the DCA Budget Office, also available to answer any questions. All right, I know this topic will receive further attention from Ms. Nystrom and Dr. Rogers as they lead the Budget Ad Hoc Committee together, and we'll be looking forward to understanding more of the fiscal landscape. Thank you so much, Mr. Glassbeagle, for the update. All right, we will now turn to item number 9 with regard to the Outreach and Communications Committee report. I will turn this over to Dr. Tate, who chairs the committee.
Hello, everyone, and welcome this fine morning. First up is a strategic plan action update. So the document is current as of October 27th, and the changes are in red for your review. I understand that we've kind of been waiting on regulatory or statutory changes to move forward, and this is a no action item. Does any board member have a comment, concern, or question? Can we open up our public comment box, Ms. Moderator? Oh,
Dr.
I'm sorry.
Tate, I think Dr. Cervantes has a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Dr. Cervantes.
Good morning, everyone. Dr. Tate, or maybe staff, I just have a general question with the strategic plan and the action items. Let me see. Let me pull up my screen. There is, on page 33 of the combined packet, there's an action item that has, so the table has like a success measure, and then it has the major task, responsibility, completion. So what I saw upon my review is that the tasks seem oriented towards our responsibility to the public, and then there's another part where there's a task a little bit further down about creating videos on the licensing process. And what was missing to me in this, and I wonder if maybe I just didn't see it, but how through our strategic plan and our communication strategy, we address the types of complaints that we get. For example, we've had conversation here at our board meeting about the increased cost of enforcement and the number of complaints that come in. All of that takes staff time to process. And I wonder what considerations we have in our strategic plan on addressing some of those needs from our constituents so that it could be more autonomous, reducing our staff time or staff costs, and so that the public and or licensees who want to elevate a concern through enforcement, how those might be considered. And that was kind of long-winded, but I hope that made sense.
I'll turn it over to Ms. Sorick. I had a little trouble following you, but
let me check, Dr. Cervantes, if I'm tracking right. Are you asking if there is kind of a means for consumers that are calling to ask about the status of a complaint, or applicants that are asking about the status of an application? Are there ways that those end users can be autonomous with like our Breeze system so that they can check in on that work and not require staff time? Is that what
Yeah,
you're?
either that or what or how to submit what is necessary at the time when there is a complaint. Or we had testimony here at a board meeting some time ago on the burden of proof.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess what I'm thinking about, maybe a little bit more succinct, what I'm thinking about as I was looking at this strategic plan is that it didn't seem to speak to tasks related to enforcement and how we might be proactively leveraging our communication strategies to help not just members of the public, but also practitioners, licensees, on complaints, what is necessary to achieve burden of proof, or those types of things, as a way to support our enforcement unit and reduce the work, the labor of staff to deal with complaints, to have resources so that they are able to perform their tasks of enforcement, but it's not bogged down because we're proactively communicating. Whether it's whether it's an automated system or whether there's some other way of communicating through video, through web, through social media, how we are supporting our enforcement functions. I guess that's the part that just didn't resonate with me as I was reviewing this part of the report. The strategic plan and these success measures and tasks.
This is Antoinette. I'm not sure if I'm not sure this addresses the concern, but I think for this first kind of look at our communication tools, I'm looking at goal 4 under enforcement, developing and implementing effective communication process. Right now, what has been identified in the current strategic plan is the acknowledgement, the subject letter, the flow chart, the kind of the email communications or the letter communications that we send. It was what was evaluated in this current strategic plan. Perhaps as we look, when we get into this strategic plan is good until the end of 2023. And then typically what happens is at the end of 2023, there will be another planning where you guys look at your current goals and objectives and identify any new ones or things you want to keep, things you want to get rid of. So I would, if perhaps a good idea would be to kind of keep this in your back pocket when we get closer to that time and expand on the breadth of that particular goal, 4.1. And if you can kind of set a reminder to yourself that when we look at that at our next planning meeting, that would be, it sounds like you'd like to dig a little deeper and look at other mechanisms. And we can certainly do that. Real quick, also, we have looked at the functionality of Breeze, and sometimes our thoughts are greater than our software. So there are some limitations as to what people can log on and see on their end. Ms. Monterrubio, did you want to add anything else to this item?
Hi, I'm sorry. I was trying to unmute myself. Um, right now, just so that the board is aware, we do communicate with stakeholders through email, through letters, through phone calls, and staff does a really good job responding within 48 hours. Our letters that do go out to complainants, we do let them know the processing times, and it is quite lengthy. We also put on our website the complaint fact sheet, which talks about what happens during the complaint process, the investigation process. So I feel as of right now, the communication tools that the enforcement staff is using is working. When a complaint is opened, the complainant is notified of the analyst who is assigned. We don't provide our names, of course, for safety reasons, but we do provide contact information for that analyst. So we do welcome consumers, licensees to follow up with the analyst assigned to their case for any specific case questions. But as of right now, and the enforcement team has met to discuss what other tools we could possibly use. And I can't think of anything else at this time that we can do, but I'm definitely open to any suggestions by the board. I don't know how well using Breeze would be for a consumer to check on a complaint. That might cause more work for the enforcement team, but I just want to assure the board that each complainant is provided the contact information for their analyst, and we do respond within 48 hours.
I think what I don't question that we have communication tools that are transparent and accessible. I think in a strategic plan where we have where what we don't have with regards to enforcement is precision on the measure of like if it's effective. That's just something I'm not seeing here. That's in summary of my long-winded explanation. I think because in other tasks, we're able to get to a little bit more precision on a measure. And I recognize the unique function of enforcement, but I think it's a valid question with regards to the strategic plan about precision in our measures of, is that the best tool to communicate that particular function of enforcement. And I only bring this up to the point of how we think overall of our operation and costs and just, in terms of, I am sensitive to working remotely and the additional pressures it causes on all staff, on all workers in the public sector particularly. And so I'm not, like that's an important consideration, but I think just overall and long-term planning, and maybe that is what it is just long-term planning, how we get to a little bit more precision on these communication functions with regards to our enforcement function, so that we know if it's the most effective strategy for communicating a particular piece of information. And I'm not sure what that may be, but I just wanted to raise that and just kind of have it as a consideration, maybe for that long-term planning. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you so much, Dr. Cervantes. Dr. Tate, if I may, I think with regard to the strategic plan, we will be entering strategic planning mode actually next year, or end of next year, early next year, perhaps Ms. Sorick, or you can elaborate on that. And I think the points you just raised, Dr. Cervantes, about precision and measurement, I think are all fantastic insights to which will be really relevant as the board enters that strategic planning session. So Dr. Tate, would you be able to share with us what the timeline is as we think about planning for the next 5 years? in terms of the next strat plan?
Yes, actually, Ms. Sorek and I were just talking about it this week. Ms. Sorek, did we get some final range dates on there? Did we lose you, Ms. Sorek?
I think Ms. Sorek is having a technical difficulty with her audio for a second, so
Yeah. So
let's just
I
wait
can
for a
just,
moment.
okay. I'm happy to do
Go ahead, Dr. Tate.
No, I was going to say we were talking about that we'd probably start into the next cycle towards the end, I believe, of 2022. But she was thinking, oh, maybe we start in 2023. And so I'm wondering, did we get a final date on when that would actually begin? Ms. Sorek, have you joined us yet? Well, you may have to wait on that. But in the meantime, can we open up the public comment regarding the strategic plan?
Sure, this is the moderator, and I'm opening up the Q&A panel. It is now available, and if any member of the public would like to make a comment on the strategic plan as discussed, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and submit it to all panelists. We are displaying instructions, and we'll give you a moment.
Good morning. This is Jason. While we are collecting public comment, would you like me to give my best shot at the timeline for this?
Absolutely. Please do.
Thank you. I believe this will only be the second one that I'm involved in, but I believe our timeline, because our current strategic plan goes through 2023, that at the beginning of 2023, we will receive or late 2022, we will receive the instructions for completing the SWOT analysis, which goes into the development of the strategic plan. And then at the end of 2023, we would have the meeting, the development process meeting for the strategic plan and action plan. And then in the beginning of 2024 is when the board would vote on it. Thank you. Happy to answer any questions.
I think that was similar to what we discussed as well. And so Dr. Cervantes, happy to incorporate some of your ideas and thoughts into that plan. I think we can close public comment, Ms. Moderator.
Thank you. I've seen no request for comment. It is now closed.
Perfect. I'd like to move on to the social media update. Mr. Glassbeagle.
Thank you, Dr. Tate. Good morning again, board members. Included in your meeting materials is the social media update. It has our current information regarding followers and following, as well as views from all of our 2021 meetings so far that are now listed on YouTube. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Do any board members have questions for Mr. Glassbeagle in regarding the social media update? Seeing none, Ms. Moderator, is that one? Oh,
Yeah,
Dr. Cervantes. It's okay.
Sorry, I just wanted to comment. I don't have a question for Mr. Glassbeagle, but my own observation is looking at this report is how incredibly valuable the journal is to our overall communication. It seems to be the most popular. And I just wanted to elevate that because sometimes we spend, when it comes to communication channels, we spend a lot of time on preparing content. Even for social media, it can take a lot of time, a lot of staff time. And I just found it fascinating where our audience, where our audience gravitates the most to. And so I think that's an important consideration, or that should be an important consideration in terms of how we think about precision and long-term communication planning. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Dr. Cervantes. We appreciate it. Any other board comments? Ms. Moderator, can you please open public comment?
Yes, so I'm opening up the Q&A panel, and if any member of the public would like to make a comment on this item, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen, and we are displaying instructions, and we'll give you a moment. All right, I see no request for comment. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Moving on to the website statistics update. And again, Mr. Glass-Steagall.
Thank you, Dr. Tate. Included in your meeting materials is the website update. It includes the top 5 pages viewed between January 1 and 2021 and October 26, 2021. And then we have by quarter viewings for the pages listed in bullets at the bottom of page 51 in the combined document. And then at the further below that, we have all of the legislative and regulatory advisories and their views to date from their addition to the website. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Board members, please, if you have any questions, Mr. Glass-Steagall is available. I'm seeing none, but I'll give it a few seconds. Ms. Moderator, can you please open public comment?
Thank you. I'm opening up the Q&A panel, and if any member of the public would like to make a comment, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. We are displaying instructions, and we'll give you a moment. All right, I see no request for comment at this time. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
That would be great. Thank
Okay,
you.
it's closed.
And moving on to the update on the newsletter in the materials, the fall journal is enclosed. The next newsletter will be out February 2022. Any board member comment on our amazing newsletter that everyone seems to love?
Dr. Tate, just that I'm thrilled that there will be a new person writing the president's message next year, and that Ms. Sorg will no longer have to send those deadline reminders to me. So thank you, Ms. Sorg.
All of your messages have been amazing. So,
Ms. Sorg, thanks for making sure that I was meeting those deadlines to get them for legal review. I'm not sure folks realize that it takes about 2 months for us to be able to clear all the internal DCA reviews to get those out. So thank you, Ms. Sorg, and to the wonderful staff at DCA Legal too.
Ms. Moderator, can we open up public comment at this time?
Thank you. I'm opening up the Q&A panel, and again, if any member of the public would like to comment, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. Submit it to all panelists. We are displaying instructions, and we'll give you a moment. All right, we have Dr. Marilyn Emus that would like to make a comment. And Marilyn, you should be able to unmute yourself now. There you go, you're unmuted.
Hear me?
Yes.
Good morning. I'm from CDCR, California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. Happy to be here. I just want to thank Mr. Fu personally for his additions to the newsletter. Really enjoy them. I look forward to it every time. I will miss you, and I'm sure many of our staff will as well. So thank you so much.
He will still be on the board, so I feel like he should be writing some little bit of articles throughout. Mr. Fu, do you like that?
I serve at the pleasure.
Thank you for your comments, Dr. Emus. Yes, we will miss his president's message.
All right, this is the moderator. I see no further requests for comment. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Moving on to the outreach activities update. The most recent event was the Asppb annual meeting. It was well attended by the California Board of Psychology, and Dr. Rogers and Mr. Burke presented during the event. Thank you to you both. Any other board comment? Or Ms. Sorick, do you want to add to that?
Nope, that covers it.
This is Dr. Cervantes. Just really quickly, I just want to say that the presentations at the ASPPB annual meeting by Dr. Rogers and Mr. Burke were excellent and exemplary. They presented exemplary work by our board, and I was very proud to be in the audience and to hear them. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you for your comments. Ms. Moderator, can you open up the public comment?
Sure. I'm opening up the Q&A panel. It's now available, and any member of the public that would like to make a comment on this item, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and submit it to all panelists. We are displaying instructions. All right, I see no requests for comment. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So we're moving on. I'm trying to flip between, oh, there it is. The updates on communications and or activities of the ASPPB. Ms. Sorick, do you have some information for us?
Just to point out that Dr. Horn participated at the Outreach and Communications Committee meeting, and what was agreed upon was that there would be a regular communication from ASPBB in our newsletter, in addition to presenting or participating in the committee's meetings, to let us know if there are any updates or activities coming up. You know, as a member of the Association of State and Provincial Psychology Boards, it's always good to be aware of the services ASPBB provides, and what kind of initiatives or issues are coming up. And so our first feature in the newsletter will be in the Winter Journal, which hopefully should be going out at the end of the calendar year. Hopefully in December. It's over in publications right now. So we'll have our first ASPBB feature in that newsletter, and that will be an ongoing feature.
Perfect. Thank you. Any board member comment? Ms. Moderator, can you please open public comment?
Yes. All right, the Q&A panel is now available. If any member of the public would like to make a comment on this item, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and submit it to all panelists. We are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. All right, I see no requests for comment. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please. That would be great.
Okay.
Moving on to discuss and develop plan to update for your peace of mind. This is a pamphlet that we created in 2008. The Outreach and Communications Committee has assigned Dr. Rogers to work with staff and legal to update this brochure. Thank you, Dr. Rogers, for accepting the challenge. The changes will be presented at the Outreach and Communications Committee and then brought to the full board for final approval. Any board member comment on this item?
I am looking forward to it. Thank you for the opportunity.
It will definitely need your editorial brain. Ms. Moderator, can you please open the public comments?
Yes. So the Q&A panel is now available. If any member of the public would like to comment on this item, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and submit it to all panelists. We are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. All right, I see no requests for comment. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, Ms. Moderator, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
You see, I'm trying to flip to the other screen. Hold on. Oh, the digital divide, I think is where we're pop up yet for everybody. So in short, as a response to the pandemic and the nationwide protests in 2020, oh, did I skip something? So we already covered H. Should we move? Thank you. As a response to the pandemic and nationwide protests in 2020, the Board of Psychology has looked at several areas regarding access to care and the impact of this current time on the profession. And as a result, the committee is drafting 2 surveys, one for consumers and one for providers. And after the Outreach and Communications Committee reviews this, it will be brought to the full board for approval. Ms. Sork, do you want to add anything to this item?
I think that's a great summary.
Any board comments or questions regarding the digital divide? I don't see any. Ms. Moderator, can you please open public comment?
Sure. All right, the Q&A panel is now available. If any member of the public would like to comment on this item, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and submit it to all panelists. We are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. All right, I see no requests for comment at this time. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please, and thank you so much.
You're welcome.
This concludes the Outreach and Communications Committee report, and I'm turning it back over to Mr. President.
Thank you, Dr. Tate. Really appreciate the presentation on item number 9. And so we're going to take a break at this point, and we will return at 11 o'clock, so about 7 minutes from now, to continue with the board's business. So we will be in recess for about 7 minutes or so and return at 11. Call the roll just to reestablish quorum, or just to make sure that folks know that there's a quorum of the board here. So I'm going to turn to Ms. Berto to call the roll.
Thank you. Kasuga? Here. Cervantes?
Here.
Fu?
Aye.
Sheets?
Here.
Nystrom?
Here.
Phillips? Rogers?
Here.
Tate?
Here.
And repeating Phillips.
We'll just give Dr. Phillips another minute or so. In the interim, I think just to lay out a course of action for the day. So we will turn to item number 10, Legislative and Regulatory Committee updates, and have Dr. Cervantes provide that update. And then we will also go as long as we can till about 12:30, at which point we'll take a 30-minute a lunch break at around 12:30, and then we'll come back and finish the rest of the agenda for today after our lunch. So just doing a quick check-in, Dr. Phillips.
Mr. Fu, should I begin my presentation or just wait a few?
Let's just hold just for another minute, mainly because Dr. Phillips is on the committee with you, and I want to make sure
No
if he has
problem.
any additions that you and Dr. Kusuga will add to it too.
No problem.
All right, Dr. Phillips.
I'm here.
Perfect. All right, Dr. Phillips, thank you. All right, I think we have all of our board members who said aye from this morning here in attendance. So we'll turn it over to you, Dr. Cervantes, to take us through item number 10.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Fu. Item number 10 is the Legislative and Regulatory Affairs Committee updates. Good morning, everyone. Let me start by welcoming Ms. Susie Costa to the board as the new Legislative and Regulatory Analyst. This is her first board meeting with us. The Legislative and Regulatory Affairs Committee held its final meeting of the year on June 11th. And at our August board meeting, we reviewed movement on some of the legislation of interest to the board. Today, we have updates for you. The items for this portion of the meeting begin on page 74 of the combined packet and are informational, meaning that no action is required at this time. Pages 75 through 82 of the combined packet is a summary of the status of bills that this board took a position on this session, and we'll come back to this in a moment. But the first item, 10A, is board-sponsored legislation. Legislative for the 2021 legislative session review and possible action. The items B and C are those individual sponsored pieces of sponsored legislation. So what I'll do is I'll present those and then open for board comment and public comment. So item 10B, SB 401 PAN, Healing Arts Psychology Amendments to Sections 2960 and 2960.1 of the Business and Professions Code regarding denial, suspension, and revocation for acts of sexual contact. This is our board-sponsored bill. The current status is unchanged and can be found on page 82 of the combined packet. This is a 2-year bill, as discussed during our August meeting, and no action is required at this time. Item C, SB 801, Archuleta Healing Arts, Board of Behavioral Sciences, Board of Psychology licensees. This was our sunset bill. It's exciting for us to be able to continue our work for the next 4 years, particularly on pathways. I want to thank our talented staff led by Ms. Sorick and Mr. Glass-Steagall for reaching this milestone, as well as our board sunset committee led by Mr. Fu and Dr. Phillips. This item begins with an advisory on page 84 of the combined packet. Ms. Costa?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much, Dr. Cervantes. I am going to go over some of the changes to law done by our sunset bill, SB 801. So as Dr. Cervantes said, the law extends the statutory authority of the board until January 1, 2026, which is exciting. It repeals the registered psychologist registration category under the board. It eliminates the term psychological assistant and instead creates the registered psychological assistant registration category under the board. It also authorizes a registered psychological assistant to perform psychological functions in preparation for licensure as a psychologist. It modifies the qualifying degrees and specializations that can be used towards meeting the educational requirements to become a registered psychological associate. It authorizes the board to determine whether any degrees not listed meet the educational requirements for registration consistent with the Business and Professions Code. It eliminates psychiatrists as a potential immediate supervisor for the purpose of gaining supervised professional experience and requires registered psychological assistants to be supervised by a licensed psychologist. As Dr. Cervantes mentioned, pathways, it expands pathways to allow graduate students or psychology interns enrolled in a doctoral program leading to a specified degree to accrue pre-doctoral supervised professional experience and to be exempt from registering with the board, and expands the degrees and specializations that are eligible for licensure as a psychologist. It reduces the requirement that a person be licensed in another state or Canadian province from 5 years to 2 years in order to be eligible for licensure as a psychologist in California. It adds the National Register of Health Services Psychologists as a foreign credential evaluation service that an applicant for licensure trained outside the United States or Canada may use to perform a degree equivalency evaluation. It reduces the number of contact hours of coursework in aging and long-term care required for licensure as a psychologist from 10 hours to 6 hours. It specifies that the applied experience may count towards this requirement, and it also allows an applicant for licensure as a psychologist to provide self-certification to the board if this applicant has applied experience in aging and long-term care in lieu of coursework. Continuing education can also be substituted for coursework in the subject of aging and long-term care. This law removes the board's authority to provide extensions or exemptions from meeting the continuing professional development requirements for renewal of a psychologist license. Under board operations, it authorizes the board to assess a $10 file transfer fee when a licensee or registrant might need a file transfer when seeking licensure or registration in another state or jurisdiction. It states that the board may accept in writing the offer of a surrender of a license, and that license surrender shall be public. And it provides that the holder of a license that was surrendered to the board may petition the board for reinstatement after a period of a year, not less than a year after the effective date. That is all I have to say for my presentation on SB 801. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any board comment?
This is Dr. Harpsheets. There was just one more piece about the delegated authority to the licensure committee, which I think will speed up the requests for extensions of time and help the potential licensees to be able to move through the process of gaining supervised experience quicker.
Thank you. Thank you for that additional comment. Ms. Sorek?
Hi, really quickly, I just wanted to make sure and clarify that the registered psychological assistant registration is changing to registered psychological associate title. And I just also wanted to let folks on the line know that we sent out the advisory, and as does sometimes happen, things might need more clarification. So staff is working with the legal office on developing some clarifications on some of the items from the advisory on registration. So we're putting together a document that will hopefully be helpful, useful, and we will go ahead and post that matrix and additional information to the advisory on our website. So just a heads up for those on the line who have been asking some follow-up questions to the advisory. And that was all I wanted to add. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Phillips, I thought I saw your hand.
It is indeed up. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that in terms of terminology, that psychiatrists are no longer allowed to be primary supervisors. It's still possible for psychiatrists to be delegated supervisors. So I didn't want to create confusion by perhaps a difference in terminology than what most psychologists are used to having. I believe that's correct. Correct me if I'm wrong.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Costa. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you. I see no other board comment. Can we open public comment?
Thank you. I'm opening up the Q&A panel, and if any member of the public would like to make a comment on this item, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and submit it to all panelists. We are displaying instructions, and we'll give you a moment. All right, I see no requests for comment at this time. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Okay. So now moving on to item 10D, legislative update, review, and consideration of additional changes. And this includes item E, which is bills with active positions taken by the board. And here is where that summary on pages 75 through 82 of the combined package is helpful. It provides the current status of each of the bills. And then page 83 of the combined packet is an advisory on AB 107. The board had previously taken a position of support unless amended. These items are all informational and no action is required, but I did want to open up for board comment or questions at this time. Is there any board comment or question on our list of bills that we took positions on? I see none. Part of just for our public, for our members of the public that might be in our meeting, part of what has happened is that the legislative session ended in the fall, and so this is a time where we're providing updates and information, but there isn't the fate of some of these bills that we took positions on earlier in the year has been determined or is not moving at this time. So that's why this is an informational item. Can we open for public comment?
Thank you. I'm opening up the Q&A panel, and if any member of the public would like to comment on this item, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and submit it to all panelists. We are displaying instructions and will give you a moment. All right, I see no request for comment at this time. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
Okay.
And then item 10F are the watch bills. Those are included in the summary that I noted earlier. Moving on to item 10G are legislative items for future meetings. The board may discuss other items of legislation in sufficient detail to determine whether such items should be on future board meeting agenda and or whether to hold a special meeting of the board to discuss such items pursuant to Government Code Section 111.25.4. Is there any board comment on legislative items for future meetings? Okay, I see none. Could we open public comment?
Thank you. I'm opening up the Q&A panel, and if any member of the public would like to comment on this item, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and submit it to all panelists. We are displaying instructions and will give you a moment. All right, I see no request for comment at this time. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
Okay, it's closed.
Mr. Fu, this concludes my report for item number 10. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Cervantes. We will now go to item number 11, the Enforcement Unit Report. Ms. Monterrubio, over to you.
Good morning, board members. Can everyone hear me? Can everyone hear me?
I can.
Yes, yes.
We
Okay,
can hear
thank
you.
you. Thank you. Included with my board report is the overview of enforcement activity. I do apologize that the board members did not receive the updated overview of activity until this week, but we did not have our enforcement committee meeting until November 12th, and the committee was not able to review the overview until that time. So we have currently one vacancy in the enforcement unit, and that's an Associate Governmental Program Analyst, also known as an AGPA. This position has been vacant since October 29th, and we are currently reviewing applications to backfill this position. This position is responsible for performing desk investigations, sending cases to the Division of Investigation, and referring cases to the Office of the Attorney General. We did receive 15 applications for this position. Since July 1st of 2021, the board has received 332 complaints, and all complaints received are opened and assigned to an enforcement analyst within 10 days. Since July 1st, we have issued 4 enforcement citations, and again, citations are issued for minor violations. Since July 1st, we have referred 14 cases to the Office of the Attorney General for formal discipline, and we are currently monitoring 42 probationers. And of the 42 probationers, 2 are out of compliance, and being out of compliance can result in a citation and fine or further disciplinary action through the Office of the Attorney General. There is no action requested at this time. This is for informational purposes only. Are there any questions regarding my report? Okay, hearing none, that concludes my report.
Oh, Ms. Montrubio, sorry, I had my hand up.
Oh,
this
sure.
is Ms. Nystrom. I just had a quick question. For the number of open cases, I think you said there was 332, but in previous years, the number was significantly more. And I was just curious kind of what your experience says about the lower number of cases.
So we have 332 as of right now, and this information was gathered as of November 9th. So I think we're on track to most likely hit about 1,000 complaints by June 30th. So I don't think that, again, I think we're on track to see what we've been seeing since 1718 and 1819. I don't think there will be a decrease at all. But again, this is only from July 1st to November.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I'm not seeing any additional hands raised or unmuted mics, Ms. Monterrubio, so we're going to turn to public comment for item number 11.
Sure.
All right. The Q&A panel is now available. If any member of the public would like to make a comment on agenda item 11, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and submit it to all panelists. We are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. All right, I see no requests for comment. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, returning back to the board, are there additional comments for Dr. Phillips?
Yeah, I just wanted to say how much I appreciated enforcement staff and management doing such a great job of reorganizing those figures in a way that are, I think, much more meaningful to us as board members. So I appreciate the responsiveness and the hard work they did to put this all in place. That's it.
Thank you, Dr. Phillips. All right, seeing no further questions or comments from the board. Thank you, Ms. Monterrubio, for the enforcement report.
My pleasure.
We will now turn to item number 12, the licensing report. Over to you, Ms. Chung.
Thank you, Board President. Good morning, board members. In my report, I have included our license registration data by fiscal year. We see a slight decrease in the psychologist trend, but actually, if we look at the licensing population data in attachment A, we actually have like an increase in current licensees. That is in a current status. The slight decrease in total number was because the delinquent or canceled status licensee kind of a little bit outpace those have becoming active or coming back to active or become a new licensee. So I just want to point that out. Secondly, we have made some refinement to the attachment A as well. We make the verification state probation column by itself because it should be distinctive data rather than nested under the revoked data as they are different. Following along in our application workload, we have observed similar trend. We have a slight increase in our application received, and just want to share that. And our last attachment, attachment E, on the average application processing time frame, we see that there's an increase in the average time frames from October to September on the all three types of license and registration. Is because we have increased volume with a little bit of staff shortage, but we have been working at our best to review application and processing them as the timeliest manner as possible. That concludes the report. Happy to answer any questions.
This is Dr. Harpsheets, and I have worked with Ms. Chung throughout this past couple of months, and I just wanted to say thank you to them. They've been so responsive to trying to address issues that are coming up, and the transition with SB 801 coming into play. And I just wanted to say how much I appreciate their work and their diligence in making these changes happen.
Thank you, Dr. Harpsheets.
Dr. Rogers, and then Dr. Phillips.
Yes, hi. Thank you so much. I have a question about the information provided on page 98, the 2020 and 2021 monthly complete examination statistics. When I was looking at, let's see, August and September of 2021, let's see, that's looking at, nope, that's not the page. Oh, you know what? Oh, sorry. Yes, I'm looking at the exam statistics. So for August and September of 2021, I see that the percentage that passed is 38.28% and then 39.32%. And I was just wondering if you could give any thoughts about why that number is so low relative to other months. And it also seems that the percentage numbers have been trending downward since May of 2021. And I just wondered if you had any ideas about that or could speak on it a little bit.
Thank you, Dr. Rogers. We don't have the specific reasons for the trend, but I think is because the columns that you're looking at, the the fourth column, percent passed, it includes both first-time takers and repeaters. So it could be contributing to the low pass rate is maybe the repeat takers they are taking, and there are more repeat takers that taking in that month that's not passing. Because I did check the trend from last year as well on the first time passed, which is the last column of the table. It shows like a similar trend, but it seems the more first timer for the exam actually passed, but the percent pass on the whole remains about the same. I'm talking about the total roll. I hope that helps.
Well, this is Dr. Harpsheets, and since we're talking about the EPPP on these numbers, it might be interesting to see if Asppb has any input on that, since it's a national and Canada exam versus the CAPLE, which is California. I wonder if we could get some input from Asppb on that.
I don't see, Dr. Harpsheets, this is Antoinette. I don't see anyone on the line from Asppb. So I don't know if anybody could speak to that.
Maybe I could follow up, or Ms. Chung, one of us could follow up and see if we can add to it, because I think it's definitely worth looking at, since we have had members of the public express concern from time to time about the difficulty in passing the EPPP, particularly for people from certain groups that I think it's worth looking at. Thank you, Dr. Rogers, for addressing that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Harbsheets. And I wholeheartedly agree.
I do think, along the lines of Ms. Chung was talking about, this is Dr. Phillips, that it appears from the numbers that there's a greater number of second or third time test takers in the months that you're talking about. So if you look at the first time test takers, it's holding pretty steady. It bounces around a little bit, but there's a substantially, I think, proportionally a greater number of second or third or fourth or whatever time test takers that may not be as successful as they have not been successful in taking the exam before, continue not to be successful. So I think it would be useful to get some kind of analysis so we had a better sense of why that was happening. Because the numbers did seem low to me in terms of the overall passage rate for all takers. So maybe if we can get a little bit more analysis and coordinate with Asppb, better sense of what's going on. And the test is the test and they have to pass it. So, and the cutoff is kind of determined purely scientifically. So I don't know that we really have any control over it, but it'd certainly be good to get some more information.
Ms. Sorek, would you like me to follow up with maybe Dr. Horn, or would you prefer that Ms. Chung do that?
Actually, she's not on the line today, but Mr. Glassbeagle can have Ms. Snyder, our exam coordinator, reach out to ASPBB to get a little bit more information or insight on this item. Is that okay, Mr. Glassbeagle?
Of course.
Thank you.
And I think we can do in-house, we can do the analysis of how many first-time test takers versus subsequent test takers we have.
Wouldn't it be interesting to see if, in their own analysis, what they might be finding if they divide it out a little more specifically into groups? Or like certain areas of the country, perhaps. It would just be interesting to know more.
Yeah. Interested to hear if they have a downward trend altogether.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if they can, because I don't think they can do the analysis of first-time test takers times subsequent test takers for our licensees, because that's our data that we provide them. So I think we can still do that in that portion.
This is Dr. Cervantes, the resident educator. One of the things I noticed when I look at this chart is that there seems to be a slight increase in the pass rate of first-time test takers in November, December, and then like late in the spring. And I wonder if that correlates with completion of doctoral programs. I think that might be something interesting to look at. From what I understand, there is a higher proportion of test takers that pass the first time sooner after they finish their program than if they let time lapse. And so that might also help us to just understand if we can, because they have to pass, they have to complete their program to take the test, right? So maybe we can get an analysis that includes like how far, for those first time test takers, like how far out are they from their completion date, are they taking the test? I don't know if that's an analysis we could draw, but I think that might be interesting to note.
Mr. Glassbeagle, did you need any more clarification on that request? Or do you feel like you've got a next step for that?
Yep, I've got everything, and I will work with Ms. Snyder on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I had one additional comment. And that is as it relates to page 99. And you may have explained this, Ms. Chung, and maybe I missed it. I'm looking at the delays that kind of bouncing around there. Are the delays in the October column, those primarily due to the increased volume that you get in September and October?
Thank you, Dr. Phillips. Yes. So it's two reasons. One is because of the increased volume, and then we have short on staff in the month of October and November. But by the end of November, we will foresee that we're back in full force.
Okay. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Absolutely.
Are there further comments from committee members before we go to the board? Excuse me, to public comment? I do have one question for you, Ms. Chung. I know you referenced the capacity of the licensing unit with regard to processing applications. Would you be able to share with us what is the timeline by which you hope to address the capacity issue, and what is the targeted, and a reminder to us, what is the targeted goal for the processing times with relation to attachment E?
Sure. Our processing time currently is about 9 to 11 weeks, about 2 months. We expect currently we have 3 full-time licensing analysts processing about annually about 1,200 to 1,400 new applications that we received. By the end of this month, my additional analysts will be coming back. So we will have our 4 full analysts reviewing and processing new application and existing application as well. So we hope that by the end of the year, we will be able to get back on track to less than 2 months, or about a little bit less than 2 months. Cannot promise on the timeline, but that's our goal, just due to the variation of volume and quality of application received. That's just a very rough guesstimate. In the long-term goal, I think we are going through pathways, so we got our pathway statutory changes in place, part of them, some of them, and then we'll continue to streamline the licensing application process, make regulatory changes, so that will help streamline the process as well. And then we're also working with OIO, sorry, I forgot. I don't recall the full name of the OIO, what it stands for, but it's organizational change management from the department to help us look at our business process to find efficiency. So once all that happens, we will continue to work with the department to submit a proposal to get any resources that we will need to tackle this time frame in processing application.
That's really helpful, Ms. Chung, with regard to the times. I know we've received a lot of questions about processing times, and I know your unit has been working to address them and turn over the responses in a more timely fashion, and just appreciate the fact that you've been doing so, given just the limited capacity you may have at this time. So thank you for that effort. And then, a related question just to what Dr. Cervantes asked, just for clarification purposes, in terms of eligibility for the EPPP, a candidate has to have completed both their doctoral degree and 1,500 hours of supervised professional experience. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So it's the case where that in terms of proximity to completion of the doctoral degree, that's going to be dependent on whether or not a candidate has completed those 1,500 hours up by the time they have completed their degree. Is that accurate?
Yes, because a candidate will have the option to select completing part of their supervised professional experience during their doctoral program or after graduation.
And do you have a sense of how many candidates who are taking the exam typically have those 1,500 hours around the time that they're earning their doctoral degree?
I don't have the approximation top of my head recently, but there was one data point that we did some research on, I think a few years back. Probably things have changed already. I remember there was about 30% pre-doctoral experience at that time. I mean, about 30% has started their pre-doc experience while they're doing their doctoral program.
Understood. And then one final question. I know Dr. Phillips has his hand raised. Dr. Phillips, unless it's related to my line of questioning. Okay, so yeah, go ahead. One more question. So, I mean, this might be answered probably when Dr. Kusuga makes her presentation for item 20 tomorrow, but in theory, the early option for what Asppb calls the knowledge exam, that would require a change in our regs, right? I mean, assuming, depending on what we do with the two-part exam, I mean, that would require a change in regs in terms of the early admittance option that Asppb has talked about with regard to the EPPP Part 1 knowledge exam.
Yes. The board will need to look at what are the criteria for eligibility will be looking like. Depends on your discussion.
Understood. All right. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Dr. Phillips.
Yep.
I just wanted to mention as a point of information for people as they're thinking about this, that people can be eligible to take the exam and not take the exam yet. So I know from my contact with graduate students, since I actively teach, that some people choose to wait a substantial period of time even after they're eligible to take the EPPP. Others want to get it out of the way as soon as possible. So it really varies from person to person. So the fact that people reach the threshold doesn't necessarily mean they're going to take the exam.
Thank you, Dr. Phillips, for that insight. All right, we will now go to public comment. Thank you, Ms. Chung, for bearing with our questions, and you might get more. So, Madam Moderator, would you please open public comment?
Thank you, Mr. Board President. I've opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to comment on agenda item 12, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and submit it to all panelists. We are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. All right, we have Dr. Harris, Scott Harris wanting to make a comment. So Dr. Harris, hold on a moment and I will find you in my list. All right, you should be able to unmute yourself now. All right, Dr. Harris, you're unmuted.
Yes, hi. This is Dr. Harris, and I'm the on the board of the LA County Psych Association, and I wanted to just to ask an additional question. Some of our members were also concerned about the increasingly lengthy processing time for psych assistants? And was what you were saying before applied to that same process?
All right, this is the moderator. I see no further requests for comment. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Ms. Chung, would you be able to answer the question that was posed in public comment?
I heard that. Let me see if I got that correctly, Dr. Harrison. That you were asking that about the psychological assistant registration lengthy processing time, and see if it was the same like before.
Similar.
Oh yeah, there we go. Thank you, Dr. Harris.
If it was similar to what you were talking about in terms of the licensing applications, is there a lag time for psychological assistance as well?
I see. Thank you for your clarification. Yes, so we are processing all applications, so including both psychologist applications and psych assistant applications according to the order in the date that they were received. So they will be subjected to the same processing time frame. So there's not like a different queue for those two process. So I hope that answered your questions, and thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Chung and Dr. Harris, for your question and comment. And I just would like to add that on attachment E of item 12, the processing times for psychologists, psychological assistant, and registered psychologists are available. And with regard to psychological assistant, in terms of a comparison, in October, it was a 44-day average processing time frame. And in May, it was 30 days. So just in terms of looking at those 2 point in times, we've seen an increase in about 14 days average processing times on that front. Attachment E goes into more detail with regard to all three categories of licensure. So not seeing any additional board comment or and unmuted mics on item 12, we will take item number 13, the Continuing Education and Renewals Report, and we will turn it over to Ms. McCochran.
This is Jason. I'm going to present on behalf of Ms. McCochran today. Good morning again, board members, almost afternoon. The Continuing Education and Renewals Report is included in your meeting materials beginning on page 100. Of note, the audits for February 21 through June 2021 were sent out on October 7th. Those audits conclude on December 6th. The current pass rate for the January 21 through June 2021 are 26%, and 51% of the audits have not yet been received. And that's not a low pass rate at this point at all, because there have been the long-standing waivers, which push the requirement to meet the continuing education piece of the renewals out till at different points within 2022. They have between the majority have January 26, 2022, and I believe the other one, anyone that renewed between October 1 and October 31 have until March 28th, 2022 to complete the continuing education. So those numbers will be pending for the first few months of 2022. In addition, congratulations to Dr. Phillips for passing his continuing education audit. I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Glassbeagle. Congratulations, Dr. Phillips. Jason, quick question for you. Can you explain just the difference between deficient and failed? Because I think when you glance at it, one would suggest that if you're deficient, you may have, why isn't that a failed audit?
Absolutely. During the auditing process, we do an audit on the materials, and then if they are short or if items don't count or if there's an issue, we will follow up with the licensee before the expiration date or the final date of them to submit their materials, and let them know that there may be an issue with the materials, and they can attempt to resolve the issue, or maybe they have additional courses they can submit that they were just holding on to. So these audits that are deficient are more in a pending status. Once they have failed, that's at the point where there is no more information to provide, and they just aren't able to pass the audit. Thank you.
Understood. The other thing I would just like to acknowledge, in addition to our congratulations to Dr. Phillips, is that we're caught up on the continuing education audits. I mean, when I was on the board, we were looking at audits from several years before, and I think this is one of those first times where we are seeing the audits happening in the same year which we're meeting. And so I just want to comment that really hats off to the team and to Ms. McCochran for really bring us up to speed on these CE audits. It's been quite an endeavor. And so really want to take the time to acknowledge the efforts of staff to do that.
Thank you. I will pass that on to Mr. McCochran.
Dr. Phillips, you had your hand raised, and I wanted to make sure I got to you before we went to public comment.
I did. I was going to say something very similar to you, to Mr. Fu, so I did take my hand down. But it's impressive that we've now gotten to the point where we're dealing with the current year. Because for a long time, while we were trying to catch up on the audits, we'd be a couple of years behind. So I think it's great. I also think it's important to emphasize for any licensees that are listening to today's board meeting that they make certain the continuing education courses they're taking are approved by the appropriate body, whether that be APA or CPA or other organizations that we've allowed to certified continuing education. Because I know people recently that I've spoken to that were shocked to find that they'd taken like a 2-day course only to find that it didn't count toward continuing education because the particular provider had not gotten the appropriate approvals. So I do think as a word of warning to our licensee consumers, they should be very careful to make sure that happens before they make that time and monetary commitment to a particular continuing education course.
Also, I think it's important to remind licensees to keep records of all their continuing education, because then it will all be ready for in case they get an audit.
Thank you, Dr. Phillips, and thank you, Dr. Kasuga. Ms. Sorek?
Hi, just real quick, I wanted to also, I love these reminders, and it reminds me of an article that might be helpful if you are chosen for audit. We've done that in the past, and it's always good to have helpful reminders. But another reminder is, because this just came up recently, is even if your employer is suggesting a continuing education course, to still double check. That has come up in the past, and they weren't approved courses, unfortunately. And we always want to be fair with those situations, but to be mindful that you as the licensee have to kind of double check that it is an approved course.
Thank you, Ms. Sorek. All fantastic PSAs from Dr. Phillips, Dr. Kasuga, and Ms. Sorek. Any public comments on this item? Madam Moderator, could you please open up the public comment section?
Thank you, Mr. Board President. I have opened up the Q&A panel, and if any member of the public would like to make a comment on this agenda item 13, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and submit it to all panelists. We are displaying instructions, and we'll give you a moment. All right, I see no requests for comment at this time. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you, Madam Moderator.
Okay, it's closed.
Mr. Glassbeagle, one more comment. Just on attachments B and C, the term deficient is used, but on attachment D and the term pending is used. And so I understand that it's because on D, it's in reference to the pending and fail rate for the second audit. And so it may not necessarily be deficient, but I just wanted to make sure I highlighted that because our conversation about deficient versus pending, if folks are taking a look at this, it may not be very clear what the difference is between deficient and pending as either when we've labeled the graphs as such too.
I appreciate you bringing that up. I'll work with Ms. McCochran on ensuring that they are consistent throughout all attachments.
Thank you. All right. I'm not seeing any unmuted mics or raised hands, so we'll turn to item number 14, the regulatory update. And I will turn this over to Dr. Cervantes.
All right. Thank you. We're still in morning, so I could say good morning again. Item number 14 is regulatory update review and considerations of additional changes. This information begins on page 107 of the combined packet. The status reported is as of October 27th. Mr. Glassbeagle, is there any further updates on these items?
Good morning again. There is no further update. I can share that the continuing professional development package is still with the Office of Administrative Law. They are waiting on a signed 399 form, which is a fiscal impact form from the Department of Finance. And they have already begun their preliminary review while they wait on that document. So I've been in touch with the reviewing attorney and am available to them for any questions or comments. The other update is the psychologist fees package, which the board is working on to raise the fees to the statutory maximum, is, I believe, done with the initial departmental review. We are just waiting on the agency end of it to get their business consumer services and housing agency to get all the final signed documents from them before we can notice it with the Office of Administrative Law. But again, the hearing is anticipated to take place at the February board meeting. I believe that is it. Just to point out the psychological. Nope, I think that's it. That's all I have right now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Glassbeagle. And I just want to apologize if you heard a vicious attack dog in the background. There was a squirrel outside the window. So this report was for information and there's no action required at this time. Is there any board comment?
Dr. Cervantes, just a comment here that I want to acknowledge the tremendous work that has been done for continuing professional development and the fact that we are near the end. It's been certainly a labor of love over many years and over many board members, including some here and not here, who have termed off the board. And so just wanted to make sure we acknowledge that, that effort.
Thank you. And I share in that it's like a quick update that at this meeting, but it reflects years of work on behalf of board members and staff to get us to this point.
And to give it a little context, I came on the board in 2013, and it was already well underway. So it's been at least 8 years, if not more, to get this perfected and to get it through the regulatory process. So it's been an amazing feat on behalf of by board members, but also by staff and their diligence in pressing forward with this.
Thank you, Dr. Phillips. Mr. Glass-Steagall?
Thank you. There was one additional package that I wanted to mention. I apologize. That is for the retired license category. We are in the initial comment period for that that package. The comment period ends November 31st, and the hearing is scheduled for December 1st. After the hearing, the language and any comments made during the hearing or the public comment period will be brought to the board during the February 2022 board meeting for the consideration and final vote. Thank you.
Mr. Glass-Steagall, since November only has 30 days, would it end on December 1st then?
Yeah, it would.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. I see no other board or staff comment. Could we open up public comment on item 14?
All right. I've opened up the Q&A panel, and if any member of the public would like to make a comment on agenda item 14, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and submit it to all panelists. We are displaying instructions, and we'll give you a moment. All right, we have Dr. Winkleman that would like to make a comment. So Dr. Winkleman, you should be able to unmute yourself. All right, you're unmuted.
Hi, this is Dr. Elizabeth Winkleman from CPA. I just had a quick question. Mr. Glass-Steagall, thank you so much for the update. And my question is about the effective date of the CPD regulations. So I understand it's with the OAL right now and that they're waiting on something. But, and forgive me, I don't know the technicalities, but the effective date in the last draft was January 1st, 2022. We're already November 18th, 2021. What is likely going to be happening with the effective date if we're almost in 2022 when it's approved, or maybe already in 2022? So thank you. If you can provide any clarification on the effective date or likely effective date. Thank you.
Absolutely. I have been preparing for this for quite some time to try to make this as seamless of a transition as possible. I'm aware that the Office of Administrative Law and Finance, together for their review, have well into the first 3 months of 2022 to complete the review. Generally, for all reg packages prior to COVID, and I believe it's per the California Code of Regulations, the APA, not the American Psychological Association, but the admin procedure that they have to follow is they have 30 days to review a final package. Now that was extended. They had 2 60-day, I believe, extensions, so that's why the time frame is a lot longer than it used to be for their final review. But I have been in touch with them to let them know that the effective date is likely going to be passed when they review this package, and what our options are to move that date to match to be out after the effective date of the legislation or after. And I'm in touch with them. I haven't heard anything from them yet about all of our options, but as soon as I do, I'm going to bring that back so we can review our options together for the board and staff. Thank you.
All right, and a next comment is from Joe Linder Crow. So Joe Linder Crow, you can now unmute yourself, and you're unmuted.
Hi, everyone. Yes, Dr. Joe Linder Crow. I'm the CEO of the California Psychological Association, and I had the same question that Dr. Winkleman had. Mr. Glass-Steagall, I think I understood what you said, but is there any way, and the answer may be no, can we confirm, though, for folks that it's not going to be implemented on January 1st, 2022. Can we go that far and say that? And then is there just any way at all to know, are we talking about mid-year? Are we talking about in 2022 at some point? Do you have any other way of gauging, just so we can help begin to let people know what to anticipate? And and maybe not, and I understand you don't have exact dates, but we're just trying to help. We are now getting a lot of questions about this, and when it's going to go into effect and so forth. Also, we're planning for 2022 in terms of programming and developing courses and that sort of thing. So anything else you can share with us?
I appreciate the question.
Ms. Hoganson, actually, Mr. Glass-Steagall, maybe Ms. Hoganson can speak to this a little bit. Ms. Hoganson?
Sure. Heather Hoganson, I'm the Regulatory Counsel with DCA Legal. We have requested that OAL make this regulation effective January 1, 2022, and that is certainly within their ambit to make happen. It's just a question of waiting for Department of Finance to sign off, and we've put in a request that they expedite that as well to get that in. So I would anticipate that within the next 45 days, we would get something from them. But if we don't, then OAL has in the past historically worked with programs to change things a little bit. Normally their regulations are effective on a quarterly effective date going forward. But in this case, we did ask for the early effective date, and so we are still hoping to make that happen.
All right, this is the moderator, and I see no further requests for comment. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes.
Please do.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
This is Dr. Harbsheets, Mr. Fu. Well, I guess I'm asking Mr. Glass-Steagall if the effective date does stay as January 1, 2022, can you just speak a little bit about what that would mean logistically for licensees as you see it now, if you have that information?
Thank you, Dr. Harbsheets. Our language, the way it's written, does allow licensees, even if they are, let's say they renew or expire in 2022, they have the ability to utilize the current method of collecting their continuing education throughout their renewal. So the first renewal after the effective date of the legislation. So technically, there is no impact on those licensees.
Okay, so they would not have to worry or scramble because they could continue the process as they have been doing it, gathering credits for continuing education. And is that for the first renewal, if it's 2022, if someone renews in say 2023, that's their first renewal, do they have that option also as it's written?
I would have to review the language to see how it's exactly worded. I can pull it up, but it might take me a little bit to find the exact section. And I'm happy to take a look, but I believe it's for anyone that expires after for the first expiration after the effective date of the legislation. So it could be for somebody in 2023 as well, I believe.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
I had a comment. I'm a little confused. I thought we were trying to set this up so there'd be a year where we could educate people before the regulations even took effect. So I don't know if the attitudes changed on the part of staff, but I think the representation we made was we were giving sufficient time for both the board and for CPA to spend time educating people rather than kind of plunging them into the middle of it without having had that time. So I'm a little concerned about picking the January 1st, 2022 date. It's a little late to be mounting an educational effort, I think. So I personally would suggest that we go for an effective, if we are assuming we can have it by January 1st, 2022, that we actually go for an effective date of January 1st, 2023. Otherwise, I think we're going to create some pandemonium that's unnecessary.
Ms. Hokinson, can you speak to our options on this? I think that was the obvious goal, and that was the hope, but the process is not always what we hope or anticipate. But Ms. Hokinson maybe can elaborate on the options for that awkwardness.
My recollection from the final statement of reasons was that we had built in a transition year, but that when it became effective is when the CPD became available as an option. And so there's still that year of build-in. It's just a question of the options are there.
So you're saying that that year is a year, that optional year is a year in which we can educate licensees, to use that year to educate them and give them that option. Is that correct?
Yes, there is that transition year is in the regulation. Yes. And that's what our point to OAL in requesting the January date was. But as the date gets closer, we can, and as we find out from Department of Finance when their ETA is, that's when we can work with OAL and get our options at that point.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I do want to just make one further comment, and that is, I'm just trying to put some punctuation on this. To have the transition year where we're trying to educate them while they already should have chosen, if they're trying to complete their hours, the option, really defeats the purpose, having a year to kind of, so I just want to be as clear as possible that I think this could really come back and bite us in the ass.
Thank you, Dr. Phillips. Ms. Sorick, I'd like to request that at our February board meeting, we have a presentation about implementation, or I would hope we would have some more substantial information to go into what this year of education would look like, and what folks can expect at the time that they renew their license and this requirement. I think it would help all of our stakeholders have some clarity on that.
Absolutely.
Thank you, everyone, for your comments. I don't see any other board comment. I just want to give a moment here. No other board comment or staff, right? Okay. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for the robust discussion on our regulatory package. It has really been a pleasure to work alongside Drs. Kasuga and Dr. Phillips this year on the Regulatory and Legislative Affairs Committee, and also working with our very talented board staff. The volume of work that was done in the last year and a half on this front is, I find it incredible. And so thank you to all of you. And this concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Cervantes. So we are actually moving quite at a clip's pace. So what's going to happen is that we are going to take a lunch recess. And the lunch recess will last for about 45 minutes, a little bit under 45 minutes. And at 1 p.m., we'll head into closed session. And we'll go into closed session to meet pursuant to Government Code Section 11126C3 to discuss disciplinary matters, including proposed decisions, stipulations, petitions for reinstatement or modification of penalty, petitions for reconsideration, and remands. Additionally, if time permitting in closed session, we would also begin the discussion around the annual evaluation of the executive officer pursuant to Government Code Section 11126A1. We will have Deputy Director Carrie Holmes join us tomorrow morning in closed session as well to continue any discussion we have with regard to the evaluation of the executive officer. And of course, tomorrow morning, if we don't wrap up either of those items, we would remain in closed session. So just providing a little roadmap today for folks in general. We will not be coming back for open session for the rest of today. And we will be coming back, board members and staff, for closed session today at 1 p.m. after our lunch break. And in terms of trying to give you folks a sense of tomorrow morning when we would go into open session, I hesitate to give a time because one never knows. So I think the earliest we would be in open session would be 10 a.m. At the earliest. So would recommend to folks to make sure you're logged on or trying to log on at 10 a.m. So that we can start at that time if you're interested in continuing to follow along the board's agenda. Are there any questions about where we're headed next from board members and colleagues? Dr. Cervantes, I see your mic is unmuted, so do you have a question? Okay. All right, so I'm not seeing any hands or unmuted mics. So we will see board members and staff for closed session back at 1 p.m. And thank you so much for attending the first day of the Board Psychology's open session. I'll also note that for folks staying in closed session to please not log off. Please stay on your WebEx. And then I believe our colleagues at DCA Solid will lock the meeting as soon as all the public members and staff members who aren't attending the closed session jump off. And board members, just keep your mics on mute, excuse me, while you go to lunch. Yes, Dr. Kusuga, I see you're unmuted.
Just wanted to thank you for clarifying because I didn't know where we'll be doing the closed session. So thank you for that clarification.
No worries, thank you. All right, we'll be back here. Stay on board, put yourselves on mute, and enjoy your lunch. Bon appetit.